Good morning. We're learning as Chus before Shalem Filan Chaya Basarach. We're on the bottom of Mem Zayin Amud Beis. 2 lines from the bottom. Tan Rabban. Shachat Shnei Kvasim Al Arba Chalas. If someone shechted the two Kifsei Atzeres, and instead of having separated, good morning, we're 2 lines from the bottom of Mem Zayin Amud Beis. So this person, good morning,
Good
instead
morning.
of, do you have a costume for Purim? Are you going to be Queen Esther?
What do you think? Queen Esther, yes.
Wow.
Yes, and your sister. And your sister
I
also, yeah.
hope you get a lot of Shalach Manas.
2 crowns, yes, 2 crowns.
Okay. Taner Rabban. Shachat Shnei Kvasim Al Arba Chalas. If someone shechted the two kifsei atzeres, but instead of separating shtei halechem, which as its name implies is only 2 loaves of bread, he separated 4 loaves of bread. And now, 2 of these 4 are the chalas of kifsei atzeres, and the other 2 are not. Moishech shtayim mehem nifan. We'll put this on the side because this is not that statement is really disregarded in the Gemara. Vahashar nechelis bepidyon, and the rest, the other 2, you take 2 of the chales and you paida them, and then you could eat them. Right? They're just kaddish kedushas damim. They didn't actually get a kedushas haguf of becoming shtei halechem, because you only can have 2 shtei halechem, you can't have 4. But the Gemara is understanding that we still don't know which are the 2 that are going to be the actual shtei halechem, and which ones are nifta. What he does is he takes money and he says whichever 2 are actually the ones that are the shtei halechem should be disregarded, and the other 2 I'm being paid. Amru Rabban Kamei Rav Chizda. They said this to Rav Chizda, and he said, "How like a Rebbe." This is not like Rebbe, because we're talking about where he shechted the kifsei atzeres. The Rebbe, because according to Rebbe, even the Amar Shchita Mekacha, since he holds that Shchita is Mekadesh the Shtei HaLechem, so whichever one of these 2 Shtei HaLechem is, the other one is going to be Yaitza L'chulim with the pigeon. The Parak Luhecha, where are you going to do this pigeon? Either Parak Lumeavroi, if you paid it, if you take the 4 chalas out of the Beis Hamikdash and you paid it there, Kinduch of Hashem, if so, will be Yaitza. The 2 that are Kiftzei Atzeres, I'm sorry, the 2 that are Shtei Halechem, the actual Shtei Halechem, they become Patzul B'Yaitza. You're not allowed to take them out. They're already Mekudesh, according to Rebbe, with the Shechita. But if you do it inside the Beis Hamikdash, when you're going to be paida, the 2 that are not actually Shtei Halechem, now they become Chulin, and you have Chulin the Azara. That's why you have to disregard that Gemara that before it says you moishich the 2 that are kifsei, that are Shtei Halechem, you take the other 2 and you paida them. Because if you were really able to do that, then just take the 2 that you know that are you're being paid and you do them outside. The ones that are Shtei Halechem, do them inside. Amlu Reb Chizda. Reb Chizda says La'olam Karebi. You could say like Rebbe that the Shtei Halechem become a Kodesh with the Shechita of the Kifsei Atzeres. Or Parak Luhu Gavoy. And you're talking about where you paid it inside. You're going to create Chulin, and it's going to be Chulin Ba'azara. But Chulin Memela Kahavin. This is not bringing Chulin to the Azara. It's Chulin that are magically appearing in the Azara. They're happening Memela, which is not an Isser of being Mevi Chulin Azara. The Isser is to bring it in. So that since you didn't bring it in, you're not going to be Iver, and therefore it's Kedai to be paid it, even though it's in the Azara. Amali Ravina Ravashi. Ravina asked Ravashi, we said about there's a brayz that says you can only be paid it bachutz. We are choshish, even when you're making a chulim memela that you can't have it inside the Beis Hamikdash. So Gemara, no, that which you said ain't paid nela bachutz avadir b'lezer b'shemini. That's going to Rabbi Elazar b'Shimon, who says it's not yet kaddish with the shchita. The Rebbe of Salubi Yotza, right? Obviously can't be Rebbe, because Rebbe would never say you do it b'chutz. That's certainly, if you want it to Makodesh, you can't be Moitzi, the Shtei HaLechem, the ones that are real Shtei HaLechem. So Vice Dice, that must be going according to the Rav Shimon, that says you do it b'chutz. Amalei Rav Acha Brei Rav Rav Ashi. Lema Tehavi Tiyufta de Rabbi Yochanan. Meha, or Mia, at least it's a Shaila on Rabbi Yochanan. The Itmar, because Rabbi Yochanan Paskin's not like this. Taida sheshachta al shemaynim chalas. A taida that a person said he's bringing a taida, which is supposed to bring with it arboim chalas, 40 chalas, and instead he separated 80 chalas, and he shechted them. Chizkiya Amar kitchu arboim mitoich shemaynim. Chizkiya says 40 of the 80 become kachim with the shchita. Rabbi Yochanan Amar loy kachim arboim mitoich shmaynim. Yochanan says no, the arboim are not going to become kaddish from shmaynim. Since he separated shmaynim, his intention is to have all shmaynim become the chalis for this taida. And since you're having a machshava that is impossible, we disregard the entire kedusha. These chalas are ineligible to become kaddish, which is not like we said. We said all that happens is we just don't know which ones become kaddish. I'm saying we're comparing taida to the kifsei atzeres, but it's the same concept. It's chalas that are coming along with that, where you did extra. So the question is, according to Rabbi Yochanan, seems to say that you can't be mekadesh by doing a larger amount. It's not going to work at all. It's not that you're going to just have a suffix of which ones are the correct 40, or in our case, which ones are the correct kifsei atzeres. So no, that's not a kasha. It's not necessarily the case that Rabbi Yochanan is being chaylik. That which Rabbi Yochanan says, it's not Mekudesh, where the person just said stam, I'm being Mekadesh these 80. But where he said, I'm being Mekadesh 40 out of these 80, then he would be masking that it's Kaddish. So Rabbi Yochanan was not really, Rabbi Yochanan was just really defining the case of our brisa. We had said that if you're Mekadesh for chalis, where you're supposed to do 2, we just assumed that meant that you mekadesh them stam. Rabbi Yochanan is saying that if you mekadesh them stam, that's not going to take effect, because you can't be mekadesh more than the amount. It must be talking about, and that's also the case by the taida, where it's really the other way around. He said this bedavka by taida, but it will also be the case by us, by kifsei atzeres, that it's only talking about where he said, I want 40 of these 80 to be Mekadesh. Or, in our case, the parallel would be if he was Mekadesh 4 chalas, but he said, I want 2 of these 4 chalas to be Mekadesh. Okay. Tani Rav Chanina Tirta Kamei Rabbi Yochanan. Chanina Tirta said in front of Rabbi Yochanan, Shachat Arba Kfasam al Beis Chalas. This is the reverse of our case. Our case was talking about, our brisa from Amid Beis was talking about where he was Mekadesh 4 chalas, where he's only supposed to be 2 together with the kifsei atzeres, the 2 kifsei atzeres. Over here he did the other way around. He separated the proper shtei alechem, but he did together with that arba kvasim when it's only supposed to be 2 kvasim. Kifsei atzeres is only 2. So what do? Moishich shnayim mehen. You take of these 4 kvasim, you take 2 of them, and you shechted the all the kvasim, but we don't know which 2 are the ones that are going to be l'shem atzeres. You take 2 of them, and you zarek the dam shaloi l'shman, which will then turn them into shlamim. A kifsei atzeres that was done shaloi l'shman. It's not all l'bayim l'shem chayv of kifsei atzeres, but the carbon remains kosher. It remains a kosher shlamim. Shemiyata oimekach. If you say the other way around, that maybe he should do the first ones l'shem kifsei atzeres, and then by default the next 2 will become shlamim. If sato asachroinim, you're going to make the others be asa to eat. That And this is Rashi explains if Sato es achroinim about 10 lines up in the narrow lines. Kedam aleil ein lechadava shenir lishman v'nitchem lishman kagen hani v'zar kishanim lishman sule chazi. Right, they were first chazi. If they would be brought lishman, they would be kifsei atzeres. And now that you brought the ones that are kifsei atzeres, they became not kosher. And now you want to make them kosher again. Even if you do bring them now shaloi lishman, it's going to be something that was nira v'nitcha, which can't be reconstituted. So therefore, you have to bring them first shaloi lishman. Amaloi Rabbi Yochanan, v'chi aimeloi la'adam amoid v'chata b'shvil shetiske. But I'm just going to point out the other one, the one that was brought as kifsei atzeres, was never not nira. It was nira from the beginning, and even if you bring the other one shaloi lishman, it just remains nira. So that's not a problem. So if you do it in this proper order, that you first shech the one that it's not going to be the kifsei atzeres shaloi lishman, that's going to work. Like Rashi says, one is not allowed to bring a carbon shalai lishman. So you're telling him, go ahead and do something you're not supposed to do in order that you should be able to eat the basar of this carbon. If you have the limbs of a chatas that mixed up with the limbs of the oila, so the limbs of a chatas are supposed to be eaten by the kehanim, and those of the oila are supposed to be burnt on mizbech. Well, you bring it all on the mizbech. Rabbi Eliezer says it's not a problem of bringing chulin on the mizbech, since these are mekudesh. We look at it as if it's eitzim. It's not that you're burning a chatas on the mizbech, but they're treated as wood that's being used. It doesn't have any more the status of a kosher. The Chum say you don't have this option. Even according to Chachamim that say that it doesn't have a din of eitzim, and it's also to burn the chatas on the mizbeach. Still, let him burn the chatas, because if you don't burn the chatas, you're not going to be able to burn the oila. In order to facilitate the burning of the oila, we should allow the illegal burning of the chatas. Even if you hold that it's not going to be considered kilu eitzim, but you should still be allowed to do it for the purpose of allowing the oila to be brought. So this whole idea of amod v'chet is really a strange concept. It sounds very peculiar, and we have rules about these kind of things. We have an essay is doicha lois essay. A lois essay, you can't be doicha lois essay in order to be mekayim an essay. These are things that are also how you're doing them. So they say that that this is Taisus say that takonos carbon is different. That's what Taisus is. That's what Taisus' explanation of this peculiar institution of Amoid V'chet is. That it's a din of takonos chamim. It's something unique to Karbonis. And then you can see in this Gemara, all the rayas only relevant to Kachim. We don't bring any rayas from outside of Kachim. Zakt Gemara. Anyway, this is not a taina to say Amoid V'chata in the case of a chatas mixed with the oila, with the evarim of a chatas mixed with the evarim of oila. Amoid V'chet b'shil tiska. Amoid v'chet b'chatas b'shul tiska chatas amina. Said Gemara says no. That which we said that you can go ahead, that you can moishech shnai mehem v'zayrik daman. That which you said you can't do it by ivrei chatas, but we're suggesting you could do it over here. That's because Amoid v'chet b'chatas v'shul shetis chatas, you would say Amoid v'chet b'chatas v'shul shetis k'ba'aylo lo yamrin. You can't suggest, even by a carbon, even if we say there's such a concept, takanas carbon, that you say Amoid v'chata, do an aver in order to save a different carbon. That's only, or save a different part of the carbon. That's only within the same carbon. But to say it on a different carbon, where you're trying to burn the chatas illegally in order to save the oila, that you can't say. But in our case, when it's all part of the same, you moishech all four of these for the same kifsei atzer. So you want to save two of the kvasim that they should be able to be eaten, so you can do it shaloi l'shman in order that would be allowed to do b'shvil amayt v'chata b'shvil shetiske.
Even though one is a shlam. But
Well,
it's
it
not,
comes to shlomim, but they were brought as the same carbon.
right.
I think that must be the case.
The thin line, but I hear it.
Yeah. Let's see if does Rashi address that? No, well, it's even more than that, right? What are you doing? You're doing this shaloi lishma, and you're causing by making it shaloi lishma, you're allowing those two kvasim to be eaten.
And by the oila.
So by the oila,
chatas.
it's your chatas is helping your chatas is helping your oila to be burned. You're not accomplishing anything by burning the chatas on the mizbech. So you're benefiting something else. It's like kamle b'derabimine is only in the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Zak the Gemara, "Ubechad milsa mi amar." Is there really such a rule that amoid v'chata b'shvil shetiske, even if it's the same thing, even in the same object? V'atanya kifsei atzer sheshachtun shaloi l'shman. Kifsei atzer that was shechted shaloi l'shman. Oy sheshachtun bein lefnei zman and bein lachas zman. Or they were shechted before Shavuos or after Shavuos, which is obviously the wrong time. They have to be brought on Shavuos. Hadam yizrak v'abasa yoichel. Be bozayrik the dam and eat the basa, because you want that way you'll turn it into a shlum. Shabbos, but if it's Shabbos when you're coming now to be zayrik the dam or to eat this, you shechted it on Shabbos. Rashi says it's not. Rashi avoids that because he shechted on Shabbos. Obviously, he did something wrong. The Moisa Shabbos Ashaloi Lishman Kai. He says it's a bedafka on Shaloi Lishman as opposed to on the cases of before or after Shavuos. So he did it Shaloi Lishman on Shabbos by mistake. So now it was Shavuos, and he did it. He meant to bring a carbon properly, but instead he did Shaloi Lishman. Lo Yizrik, he shouldn't be Zayrik it because Zrikas Dam is as a takanas mana. It's completing the carbon. It's awesome with the Rabbanon on Shabbos. So we don't allow him to be Zayrik the Dam on Shabbos. V'im Zarak hortzel lahakter emurim la'arv. But if he is Zayrik it incorrectly, it's going to be effective that you're going to be able to continue with the carbon and be makter the emurim properly that night. V'amai Lema Hamoid Chata B'Shvil Shetiska Hamoid Chata B'Shvil Shetiska. Why do we say we don't want to have to burn this carbon and not be able to bring it at all, since it's not Oil L'Bailim L'Shem Chayva? If you're not going to be Zayrik the Dam, you're going to wait. It's going to be you have to be Zayrik the Dam the same day of the Shechita. If you're going to wait till after Shabbos, it's going to be too late, and then this carbon is going to have to be Yetz L'Beis HaSreifa. So let him be Zayrik the Dam, even though it's Mechal Shabbos, and then everything will be. Then it'll be a kosher carbon that he can then go and bring the emurim after Shabbos. Zakt Gemara, Amoit Chet b'Shabbos K'dei Shabbos Amin. Amoit Chet b'Shabbos K'dei just b'Choil Lo Yaminon. No, but the problem is that you're not going to be able to bring the emurim till after Shabbos. And as far as eating the basar, it's Shabbos. You're not going to be allowed to cook the basar. You're going to have raw meat. You can't feed it to dogs. So what are you going to do with this raw meat? I guess we didn't consider the idea of eating it tartar. That was not a possibility. So you're not going to be able to eat it on Shabbos. So you're doing something on Shabbos, which is midrabanan also, in order that you should have a benefit after Shabbos that you don't say. Now the Gemara asks the other question, the other direction. Ubetarti mili lo yamar. we said we only say this, so we've already given two examples. This din that we say amoid v'chata b'shvil shatiska, that you can be over legabi being misakin a carbon. You're allowed to be over on an isser in order to be misakin a carbon to make it valid that you should be able to eat it, eat the basar. It shouldn't have to be destroyed. We said that that is limited only to where it's applying to that same carbon, it's benefiting that same carbon, and it's also if it's benefiting on that same day. So does it have to be only in the benefit is accruing to the same carbon that you're being over on? If you have a barrel of truma, shenishbra bagas el and it broke on the upper press, and it's slowly about to drip into the lower press. And this chavis el of truma is tar. And underneath it, and underneath it is chulin that's tameh. So if this truma tmeya falls down into the chulin tmeya, the truma tahira falls into the chulin tmeya, you have two bad things going to happen to it. First of all, it's going to be matama the truma. And second of all this chulin is going to have mixed into it truma tmeya, and all the chulin will also become asa to eat. So everything's going to be asa. So we say Moider Belezer Yeshua. So the question is, are you allowed to take this truma tahira and save it into a kli? So they say it depends. Moider Belezer Yeshua Shem Yachal Hatzla Mimena Revius B'Tahira Yatza. If you have the ability to take some of this truma tahira and save it into a tahar kli, that you must do so, even though by taking, let's say, a revius of it into a tar kli, then the rest of it is going to drip down into the chulin and everything else is going to get ruined. Vim lav, but let's say there's no ability to save it into a tar kli. So now what's your options? Your option is to take a tame kli, and then you're going to be biyadayim being metama this truma, which is aser, but you'll benefit, although your truma is going to become tame, your chulin is not going to become mixed in with truma tmeya, which will asa the chulin. So that's what the person would. Ideally, he'd rather save it in the truma. Ideally, he'd love if he had a tar kli and he could save all the truma in a tar kli. That would be the best. But that's not the case. But we're saying even if he has just one small tar kli, and by putting some of the truma tahira into it, he's going to abandon the rest of the truma as well as the chulin, because they're all going to mix together. Yeah, he must do so. But if he doesn't have any tar kli, Rabbi Eliezer says, Teid v'tetama. Then he has to let the truma go into the bottom. He's not allowed to take a kli that's tameh and be metama the truma biyad. He has to let it happen on its own. Yeshua af yitamena biyad. He could even be metamet biyad, even though what is he doing? He's saving his chulin from becoming tummy. So you see that he's being over of being metama. He's being over b'shvil shetiska chaveroi, and meaning shetiska this entirely different chulin, saving it from becoming trumatira, mixed in with trumatira. But you're benefiting something else than the thing that you're being over with. How could it be sure say such a thing? So Gemara Shani Hasan lo tumaka azlo. Gemara says the obvious distinction over there. In either case, it's just a question of whether he can do it biyad, but it's going to happen anyway. So there we say that it could even be benefiting something else, or it's going to mimanav shach become tame. But if he was going to make something tame that wouldn't have become tame in order to save something else, then in chanami he wouldn't be able to do it. Kiyasar of Yitzchak Tani. Kivse atzer sheshachton shloim kemitzvason psulin. V'tu'u betzurasim yatzu lebeis Yisrael. The kivse atzeres that you shechted shloim kemitzvason become puzzle, and you're going to have to wait for the following day. Tu'u betzurasim means you wait for the following day when it's past its time, when it could be brought kemitzvason. And Yatzu Lebeis Yisrael. So Rashi brings a machloek. a machlekes of what it means shaloikim mitzvasan, and Rashi's preferred pshat is shaloikim mitzvasan is that he did it shaloi lishma. So he shechted kifsei atzer shaloi lishma, so it's loy alu bailim l'shem chayva, so therefore it parcels it to be brought as a carbon. We're going to see why it's possible. The chayva should just be loy alu bailim l'shem chayva. But he says it's possible, and therefore you're going to have to wait and burn it. So Rashi says, so the Gemara is good. Let's see from the Gemara. Amar of Nachman, Mar de Makash Lulachatash Tani Psulim. The reason why Rabbi Yitzchak has a brisa that says that it's possible because he's makish the kifsei atzeres to chatas. As Rashi brings the makish, the chsiv gabe chatas, v'asisem sirizim echad lechatas, in addition to the kifsei atzeres, there were a bunch of other karbanas, and it says you bring a sirizim echad lechatas, u'shnei kvasim leishana lezevach shlomim. And then the Torah discusses the kifsei atzeres right next to the chatas. So he says, we import the din of a chatas that we know well, that a chatas, the din is not just that it's, if it's shaloi l'shma, it's loy alu ba'alim shem chayva, but chatas is pasul legamri. So we're going to say from this hekesh, the same din will apply to the kifsei atzeres. That's Rabbi Yitzchak's psak. Tanda Bei Levi, the Gomer, Rav Nachman mar de makash lu lechatas tani psulin. Rav Nachman says, you, Rabbi Yitzchak, who you'll makash at the chatas, you say psulin. Tana Bei Levi, the Gomer shalmi chayvim misham ben dava, tani ksherim. Tana Bei Levi disagrees with the brisa brought by Rabbi Yitzchak, and the Bei Levi disagree. They're a Tana that's chaylik on this Tana, and they say you learn shalmi chayvim and shalmi nedava. You don't do the mehekesh to chatas, but you rather say that all shlamim, the shalmi chayva, are compared to shalmi nedava. And by shalmi nedava, if you do it shaloi l'shma, the din is that it's loy al bam shem chayva, but it's not possible. So therefore, you don't have to burn it. The Tani Levi, b'shar shalmi nazir, sheshachton shaloi kemitzvason. The din is there's a bunch of karbanis that are brought by a nazir, and one of them is a set of shlamim. There's a bunch of different ways that it become awesome. But if you did a shalmi nazir shachton shaloikim mitzvasa, meaning that you did it shaloi l'shman ksherim le'ol ba'alim shem chayva b'nechalon le'yoyim v'layla v'eintun le'lechem v'le'izraya. It has some dinim of a shlam, the shalmi nazir, that you did shaloi l'shma, that it's kosher v'le'ol ba'alim shem chayva, like a regular shlam. But in that sense, it still remains like a shalmi nazir. It has its original din. A regular shlam is shnei yom v'layla, and this has the din of yom v'layla. But it doesn't have the din of a shalmi nazir that it needs lechem and zroya. In any case, this Rashi explains what does this have to do with our case? Because there's a hekesh on this as well. Ksherin, Rashi says, Kashal min adav v'nechal l'yoyim v'layla. Chayim v'shal min nazir. I'm sorry. Kedin tay the dam ma shlamav Rav shal min nazir. Yeah. Okay, I'm sorry. So on the last narrow line, Rashi says, "V'afa gav de iskes l'chatas." T'chsiv gifts achas b'shnasa tmima l'chatas. V'ayelechad tomim l'shlomim. Al memig mishlam mishlam chayvim midava adiflei. You have basically the same quandary like we had over here, where you brought the kifsei atzara shaloi l'shma, that Rabbi Yitzchak had said that we learn from chatas because you're makish at the chatas, and Levi had said, in spite of the hekesh, I'm going to compare it to a shalmei nedava. So you have the same question by the asham, the shalmei nazir, that it's also iskish l'chatas. And even so, Levi says, even in spite of the Hekesh, we're going to compare it to Shalmei Nadava and say that it's going to be kosher, Shaloi Lishma, but Loyol B'Alam Shechayv. It's not going to be possible like a Chatas. So that's the setup of the Machlokes between Rav Yitzchak's Brisa and Levi. Meisvei, Frak the Gemara on the Brisa of Rav Yitzchak. Asham ben Shana, Vehevi ben Shtayim. On Asham, there are different types of Ashamas. There are a bunch of different Ashamas. Some of them need a year-old lamb, and some of them need a 2-year-old ram. You need an ayil, a 2-year-old. If an Asham that was supposed to be brought with a 1-year-old, Vehevi ben Shtayim, or ben Shtayim Vehevi ben Shana, Psulin, the Te'uba Tzurasim, they're puzzle, and you got to wait for the following day. V'yasel beis Hashem, and they get burnt. Aval oilus nazir, but the oila of a nazir, as opposed to a asham, oilus nazir, oilus yeledes, oilus mitzayra, shahayu b'nei shtei sham. They're really supposed to be with the yom echad. But by an oila we say, even though it was supposed to be yom echad, if it was brought, I'm sorry, not yom echad, for a 1-year-old, and he brought a 2-year-old animal, v'shachton ksherin, it's still going to be kosher. So what's the difference between the oila and the asham? Kol shel davar, kol hakosher ba'oilus nedava, kosher ba'oilus chayva. Whatever is kosher by an oilus nedava, we're going to say it's going to have the same din by an oilus chayva. B'chol hachatas b'chata, kol hapasal b'chatas, pasal ba'asham. Everything that's possible by a chatas is going to be possible by an asham, because when makish, Rashi has a long list of where the each one of these ashamas is hookish to a chatas, chutz m'shaloi l'shma, except for the din of shaloi l'shma. That in that case we're going to say that even though the chatas is puzzle, the asham is going to be mutter. We're obviously not going like Rabbi Eliezer in that first Mishnah in Zvachim, I think. So Gabi the din of Shaloi Lishma, we're not going to say the Hekesh applies. So l'chayr, this sounds like Levi, that we're saying that we're going to follow the din of a regular ashram that Shaloi Lishma is kosher. We're not going to be makasher to chatas. And the Gemara Haytana Tana the Bei Levi, who you're asking a kasha on Rabbi Yitzchak, this is the Bei Levi. And Chanami, this is the chaylik on the brisa that he brought. It's a little hard to understand. You know, the Mefarshim, like, what kind of business is this? They ask a brisa, Rabbi Yitzchak brings a brisa, then we bring a different brisa that's chaylik, and then we ask a kasha from a brisa, and it doesn't occur to us that it's the other brisa that we already brought that's chaylik on the Tana that Rabbi Yitzchak brought. Tashma, the Tani Levi. Levi said, Asham Nazir, Asham Mitzayr Sheshachtan Shaloi Lishmon Ksher. An Asham Nazir and Asham Mitzayr that you brought Shaloi Lishmon Ksher V'Le'ol L'Baal L'Shem Chayva, which comports with what we just said, that Shaloi Lishma by an Asham is going to be kosher. Shachtan Mechutz Zman the Bailim. If you brought it before the Bailim were ready to bring the Asham Nazir, the Asham Mitzayra. For example, the Nazir or the Mitzayra were not yet tar. Each one has to wait a certain amount of time. We're talking about a Nazir became Tameh bringing an Asham. And the Mitzayra is obviously Tameh until both of them have a period of time that they have to wait. And you didn't wait that time, so he's still like in the 4th day of his waiting, so he's not yet eligible to bring his Asham. Or if it was 2 years old and it was really supposed to be 1-year-old and you shechted it, psulin. Then Isa, if you're going to say that Rabbi Levi says that we always compare a chayva to a nedava, we learn out the chayvas, which these are 2 ashamas of chayvas that you learn it out from the nedavas. Why don't we learn out from a shlamim? That we said a shlamim, that if you bring the just like a shlomim is allowed to, there's no restriction on a shlomim that it has to be a 1 year old. Let's learn out from a shlomim that's an adava to tell you that the asham also, if you bring it with something that's in its second year, it should be mutter. Dr. Mara, it's hard to even understand what the question is. Shlam mishlam gomer, asham mishlam le gomer. Even though Levi says that you learn out the shalmei chayva from shalmei nedava, but we never. Why would we suggest that you learn out a asham chayva from a shalmei nedava? Because there is no such thing as a asham nedava. So you can learn out from the shalmei nedava, but it's like hard to even understand this whole havamina, because maybe just to get to the next question, because the reason why, how could you learn out from Shlomim, which has no restriction of 2 years? So Gemara, Vi Gomer Shlom Mishlamim Nigma Nami Asham Asham. If that's the case, let's learn out the Asham from a different Asham. Asham Nazav Asham Mitzayim Asham Zelis Asham Elis. You're saying that if you bring Asham Nazir Asham Mitzayim from a second year animal, that we're saying that Asham Nazir and Asham Mitzaram Asur, if it's possible, if you bring an animal that's 2 years old, why don't you learn out from the types of Ashamas that bring a 1 year old and say it should be possible? Or Asham Zel, Asham Elis, Asham Nazir, Asham Mitzaira, and or say the other way around, that the Asham Zelis and Me'ilis that's supposed to be a 1 year old, if you brought a 2 year old, it should be awesome. We have brought in the Brisa before that it's going to be possible. Why don't you learn it out from its companion asham that is allowed to be brought with 1 year? The ones that are 2 years should be allowed to be brought. They should be kosher if they brought them 1 year, and vice versa. Where it says that's not a raya. We can learn out the din of a shlomim, a shalmei chayva, that just like a shalmei nedava, if you bring it shaloi l'shma, it's kosher v'lei l'mal m'shem chayva, the shalmei chayva have the same din. But to say that if you do something incorrectly, the shalmei, let's say the shalmei mitzvah that's supposed to be brought with a 1 year old asham, a 1 year old ayil, and you're going to say learn it out from the awesome zealous, which is supposed to be with a 2 year old, that's what it's supposed to be. You can't learn out from its me'ikar adin, its l'chatchila, from if you do this one b'diavad, the wrong one, if you do the Asher Mitzayra with the wrong one, say that because you can l'chatchila do the other one. To say you learn out the b'diavad from another b'diavad, when you do shaloi lishma from a different shaloi lishma, that's more comparable. But to learn out something that's shaloi b'chsheri, which is done incorrectly, from something which is done hechsheri, it's not correct. The Mara of Eloi, is that the case that we don't do such a thing? But Tanya minayin liyoitza shem Allah lo yerid. Where do we know that if something left the, let's say dam left the or a varim left the Beis Hamikdash, and then it was brought back in and put on the mizbeach, that you don't take it off the mizbeach shari yoitza kosher bebama, because if something goes out, you're allowed to bring carbon. You're allowed to bring avarim on a bama. So you see that there is such a thing as being yoitza, being brought on a bama. Now, but the bama is lechatchila. During the time of heter abamas, you're supposed to bring bechot. So how could you bring a din? Say that if it's Allah yared by yoitza from a bama, which is lechatchila. So Gemara Tana Azois Taras Ha'ola Riba Samachlei. Einachanami. That's not really the limit over there. It's not learning out from bama. We've had this before. This whole discussion, we say that there's a different pasuk of Zois Teres Ha'ola, which tells you that a Ha'ola once it's Ha'ola La Yered, and the Bama is just a Asmachta B'Yama. Okay, we'll stop over here. As Hashem, we will learn tomorrow morning on the Tainus.